I love Lorne Donaldson. I want good things for that guy. He gives the best hugs to the opposing coaches. It's outrageous. I just watched Albertine Montoya and him just had this big embrace, and you think, he's going to sleep great tonight. Doesn't matter if his team lost at home. He got good Lorne love.
Honestly, as we all know, good hugs go a long way. It's a real cure-all.
I don't know him at all, and I'm sure I'm projecting a lot of my daddy issues onto him, but I want him to be my dad.
Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis, and boy, what an exciting day today.
Big day, big day.
It's a huge day. We did not want to have this day without the right people to set us straight on any opinions we might have about none other than the Chicago Red Stars. So joining us, it is a meeting of the minds. It's one of the co-hosts of the Footballer's Wife podcast from the Gal Pal Sports Network. It's Lesley Ryder.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. We wanted to have you on for our preseason Red Stars preview. Timing didn't work out so well, but as a result, we've just been pushing until we could get you guys on the show. So it is happening. We are going to diagnose Lorne Ball. We are going to try and figure out what the hell happened with the Washington Spirit and against Bay FC. Let's launch into it. First of all, Lesley, what is your history with the Chicago Red Stars?
My history with the Chicago Red Stars goes back exactly 3 years, I think.
Wow. Rough.
I would say my journey with the Red Stars started in the worst of times when things were really, really bad due to terrible ownership and just no oversight or plans, long-term, short-term, medium-term, not a lot of plans. And I kind of ended up following the Red Stars once we moved out to the Midwest from Los Angeles. There wasn't a team in Los Angeles yet. It was once we said we were going to move, Los Angeles announced that there would be a team there. So I'm not salty about that, and I'm over it.
Given the trajectories of the two clubs, you might have gotten the better of the two deals here. Just given.
There's a lot to know about Angel City, and so much of it we just don't know.
That's correct. There's a lot to unpack with the media franchise known as Angel City that also has a soccer team.
Yeah, Eric has a heart out. We don't have enough time. Now, of course, by we, you are referring to your lovely wife, Emily Anderson,
Indeed.
Who is also your co-host.
She is.
Who is unfortunately not here, but is a born and bred Upper Midwesterner.
Very much so. Well, Michigan-born, Indiana raised, and in Chicago to put a middle finger up to Indiana.
So this is her fault, is what you're saying?
Yes. This is mostly her fault.
So let's talk about this moment in time. The Chicago Red Stars, as you alluded to, fired their head coach and GM Rory Dames 2.5 years ago amid an emotional abuse and harassment scandal. They brought on Chris Petroselli to basically function as a stopgap. The former majority and controlling owner, Arnim Whistler, who really knew how to work the press for a long time, finally revealed himself to be a dirtbag and was forced to sell the team, who is now owned by a member of the Ricketts family, which, again, Eric has a heart out. We don't have enough time. But Petroselli, in his first season in 2022, got them to the playoffs. It felt like it was just keeping the Band-Aid on the gushing wound from how the team had been constructed in Dames' image before. And then last year, the bottom fell out. It all collapsed. Unquestionably, in a league with the most intense parity we've maybe ever seen in a sports league ever, the Chicago Red Stars were very clearly bad and were the worst team in the league by any measure.
Still almost made the playoffs.
And still were just a few points away. Came down to the final couple of games. But now in place is not only the Laura Ricketts ownership group, but also a new GM, Richard Feu, who has not been on the job for very long, so his fingerprints aren't quite on this roster yet. More importantly, a head coach is now in place, Lorne Donaldson, who has become a little bit legendary in the general women's soccer sphere for what he did with Jamaica during the World Cup last season. They signed Mallory Swanson to a long-term extension, thereby hitching their wagon to her star. They've brought in a lot of maybe more low-profile internationals. They traded for Sam Staub. But all at the same time, this was not a team that was necessarily expected to contend was not expected to really even be all that good. It was a team that was being built for the future. Yet we sit here 8 games into the season. They're 4th on points right now. They are not actually that far away if you look at the XG and sort of the more underlying peripheral data, sitting kind of low playoff position, not far off of what they're doing on the surface. What do you make of this team in these first 8 games?
You know, I thought it was going to be a lot more of a rebuilding year this season, and the start they got off to has really been surprising to me. I know they have some really great personnel in place, and they have a lot of really young talent that is just hungry and will do whatever it takes to take the ball off your foot. And I think I don't know if it's just this team that's been put together, the environment that it's in, just the chemistry of being of the time. I think they got something going on this season. I think they are going to surprise people. That's kind of been the vibe I was getting from the preseason, from talking to the members of the front office. Everyone is kind of low key like, I think we're gonna be really good. And so to see it come out from this start, like the first 3 or 4 games, it's a little surprising, but also, oh, look at them go.
Are you getting the sense that this is catching the team by surprise too? That they thought that this was also going to be a rebuilding year that is just falling into their laps?
I don't necessarily think so. I think this is a team of players who are kind of familiar with each other from playing at like other levels. Like Mal Swanson and Ali Schlegel go way back to their Colorado days.
If you could please just continue to refer to Ali Schlegel's proper name, which is Woso Willie Nelson, that would be great.
Sorry, Woso Willie Nelson.
Thank you.
has really had a breakout year this season. She had some really great opportunities last year under Chris Petruccelli and would score off the bench early on in the season, and she never really got the chances to start and be an impact player all the time. I mean, we could probably go on for a while about what went wrong last season, but I know people kind of brusque at the phrase of blue collar football, but that's been something that they really embody. And I mean, the biggest bummer I think so far has been seeing Ava Cook go down with an injury, because she's also someone who embodies that spirit of give me the ball.
Well, I think after you see Jeremy Allen White with a Chicago area code tattooed on his forearm, it does start to feel a little pretentious.
Just a little.
Yeah.
To Schlegel's credit, she really lived by the mamas don't let your strikes get overhit this weekend, and scored what I thought was, on a weekend with a lot of really good finishes, Schlegel sort of did what good strikers do. I just feel like I'm watching a team that is consistently like making good choices when they have opportunities, and like taking the most of the chances that arrive. I feel like, and not unsurprising for a Lorne Donaldson team, I feel like they're such a pragmatic team right now. Full disclosure, Evan and I both picked them to finish 13th.
At
the beginning of this.
Big mistake. Huge.
Well, I mean, these were totally for entertainment. We owned the fact that these were going to be giant mistakes and that are. But I think that I wasn't prepared for Chicago to be able to execute its sort of extremely pragmatic vision with its personnel. And instead, I feel like we're watching a team that has had a bunch of like pretty key contributions from some new faces, some bounce back seasons. Who for you is, outside of Mal Swanson returning, which is just like, you know,
it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
it's getting, you know, your lead singer back for the band. Who for you has stood out in this early part of the season?
I think early on I was very surprised by Taylor Mollum, who didn't get a lot of playing time last season, and she started like the first 3 or 4 games and had just a really solid outing. I want to say I'm surprised by Ali Schlegel, but I'm not. She is, as much as she is the Willie Nelson, she is just this hungry little hippo who wants nothing more than to put the ball in the back of the net. It's like her sole purpose in life, and just the way that she's able to use her entire like 5'7" frame to jump higher than people who are a foot taller than her. I'm impressed by her progress, I'd say. Like, I'm not necessarily impressed by her performance, but I am impressed at how quickly she's grown.
There have been some positional shakeups that I maybe didn't anticipate, that namely somebody like Natalia Kuika, who I thought was going to slot in at right back on the other side of Maxi Raal, has been Sam Staub's center back partner. Her defensive stats are juiced a little bit because they only have 40% of the ball all the time, so they're facing a lot of shots. I think they face 14 or 15 shots a game, which is more than any other team. So she's got a lot of work cut out for her, but she is acquitting herself pretty admirably. This is a brand new center back partnership as a result with Staub and Kuika. How do you see them developing going forward? Because I also, to lead into that question, the thing that is so striking to me about this team is that they're giving up a fair amount of XG. They're like 8th in the league on XG per game. But what they're not doing is giving up a lot of really good chances. The quality of each of those shots, XG per shot, is 4th best in the league. So that tells me that they'll let you come onto them, but you are actually not going to get a lot of good looks at goal. So in what way are Kuika and Staub contributing to that?
I mean, that is something that surprised me in the beginning of the season, of just like the amount of possession that just Chicago was willing to give up in order to just batten down the hatches and fortify the house, so to speak. I think what Sam Staub and Natalia Kuika bring to this pretty young team is years of experience and the mindset of players who know what it takes in order to, I don't know, have a championship run, how to have a deep playoff run. I think for Natalia Kuika, the coming into a center back role, which isn't entirely unfamiliar to her, she does play
Sure.
for Finland. I think she's just a really good defender. She's able to just zero in on someone one-on-one and force them further out wide to just take a chance that's maybe not as good. I think they do a really good job of just playing shutdown defense in front of that money box space.
I completely agree. I mean, Kuika last year was just feels like a completely different player, obviously playing a different role in Portland, but this version actually makes a fair amount of sense given what she's used to with Finland, as far as like Chicago is not a bad cipher for like, maybe we have less talent, maybe we need to contain. Both Kuika and Staub do not have great tackling numbers as far as just raw accumulation so far, but because I think they're not being asked to step in and tackle. In the game against Bay this weekend, the two of them combined for no successful tackles, and yet they were clearing the ball nonstop. Kuika was absolutely everywhere once Chicago had the lead 2-1. They are closing down space in such an effective way and not overcommitting, which I think is creating this shell that is really allowing to hold the score where it needs to be. I mean, granted, Castellanos had a great chance to level at the death, but there just wasn't a lot of opportunity there. And I felt like what we were watching in the last 30 minutes against Bay is kind of something we've just been watching all season with Chicago. Like, if they have that lead, they are organized, committed, putting numbers behind the ball, and everyone's sort of on the same page, and then just kind of looking for opportunities to hit on the break. Maybe they've been lucky to get some early goals, but that feels like a team that could be a big pain in the ass for every other opponent that they play.
We had talked to Andre Carlisle last week about the Washington game, and he's like, I'm nervous for any team that blows a lead to Chicago because, best of luck to them, they're not getting it back.
I think the role that Staub has stepped in and played has made it, like the first goal in this game is just like an A+ Sam Staub Wunder long ball over the top to Hawking. And it's sort of like, right, if you're going to build this shell, if you're going to allow the other team to shoot, but not from great positions, if you're going to take this theory, you might as well have the best long range passer in the league to start and initiate counters when you win the ball back. I felt like this game against Bay was just an A+ script from Chicago, like a game plan that got executed exactly as one could imagine, except for what we should probably start with. And I listened to your show with Andre, and I don't want to like pile on because I know the listener is a sensitive subject.
And I think you know our position on the subject as well.
Yeah, we are established. But when I saw Kaylin Sheridan give up just an absolute howler to Seattle this weekend. I was like, well, thank God we're not going to have to talk about Alyssa Nair giving up the worst goal of the weekend. And then it happened.
I have never seen a goal with such comedic timing in the NWSL.
And that's really saying something.
And, you know, this is a storied league. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh.
My favorite thing about it is it's on an absolutely nothing long ball that Nair just picks up, and then it's some unconscionable passing in the back. But ultimately, even Tess Bodie doesn't want to score that. She turns to make her body smaller, and it somehow still hits her. Alyssa Nair has like infinite range to pass the ball to, and hits a shrinking target. and it careens off of her into the back of the net. Talk about the disconnect between what its XG was rated and the actual value of that chance. I just was like, how, Alyssa Nair? You've had so many, but like even this one is so fucking fluky. What are you doing, hon?
I mean, like, analysis is not my vocation. That is something I'll just kind of put out there. I think that's just something that happens when
That's right.
when a goalie kicks a ball and the playing out the back goes wrong. The chaos coefficient was high. It was the last game of the day. Things were going to happen, and you know the narrative needed to be set for the rest of the game, and so. You know, the timeline will do what it does.
As a Red Stars fan, and as I presume a U.S. women's national team fan,
sure.
Strangely enough, despite all of the issues that Alyssa Nair has had over the last couple of years, Chicago has been the second best shot-stopping team in the NWSL this season. Now, it's a caveat to that. Goalkeeping stats are fluky, especially in small sample sizes, so who knows if that's actually predictive, if that's how she's going to perform going forward. But it is interesting that, at least by the data, she has been a lot better these first 8 games than she has been in quite some time. Do you see any difference, positively or negatively, in Alyssa Nair's performance this year with Chicago relative to the last couple?
When I think about the last couple of seasons for Alyssa Nair, I think last season was hard. I'm not going to quite put the 50 goals on her head from last season, because I think there were some more structural issues at play, because if you have Tierna Davidson and Casey Kruger on your back line and you're still giving up 50 goals a season, there are things afoot.
It was a whole team effort.
It was a team effort last season, and sometimes the team includes a head coach who maybe shouldn't have been coaching at the professional level, but I digress. I think Alyssa Nair just kind of goes into this place where like she physically won't give up the goal. I don't know how to describe it other than like the CONCACAF Gold Cup Championship, I think to like her 150th appearance last season. Like she goes into this mode where it's shut down and the ball will stay out of the net. There will be otherworldly saves from her. There will be goal line clearances from her teammate. We've seen quite a few of those this season, which may be factoring into things. Defense first has definitely become a whole team mantra and really not something that is to be laid on 5 or 6 people.
My theory about Alyssa Nair is that during the W Gold Cup, somebody whispered in her ear, hey, you might get dropped, so figure it the fuck out.
It could have been. Like, she's turned it on.
There was a certain quality to a couple of performances during the Gold Cup that it seemed like the old Alyssa Nair was back. And I did just wonder, it's like, oh, you're 35 and Casey Murphy's been waiting in the wings for a while. And if you don't step it up, there's a new coach who might not value your place as permanent as maybe past coaches have been. So get it together or you're gone. And she does strike me as the type of personality who would listen to that kind of threat.
I mean, very much so. She's talked about it this season where it's just like she doesn't want to have any regrets. So, you know, maybe she heard that little cricket in her ear that was like, uh-oh. And she's just put on the blasters. And I think she really wants to get into that final 18. I don't think you'll find someone who wants to compete harder than her. So I think she probably set out intentionally to be like, I'm going to compete the frick out of this.
For me with her, I actually have thought sort of game by game, shot by shot, she's actually been pretty good this year. It's just that she has had, both with the national team and with Chicago, which we saw sort of capitalize this weekend, just like one huge calamitous mistake in her game. Against Portland, it's a bad clearance that Soph Smith is also trying to make herself small, and it also goes into the goal. It just happens to hit her in the hand.
Yeah.
But like Alyssa Nair has just had like these wobbles, often not with shot stopping, often with like assessing her ability to get out to a ball in time, or just with bad distribution out of the back. And that's the stuff that really gives me pause, as opposed to necessarily her as a shot stopper, where as like last season, you look at the shot stopping and it was not great a lot of the time. But this year, I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is like these wobbles. And do you have any sort of theory behind what we've been seeing there? Or do you just think this is like, sometimes you just like, it's freak and it happens?
I mean, I'm inclined to say that sometimes it's a freak thing, but when you see it happening over and over again, like there's got to be something to that. I'm interested to see if this keeps up long term, because she could just be maybe misreading things the way that people are running, just kind of still in that like getting to know you phase of her new back line and her new midfield. So I don't know. I'm it's not great, but I'm hopeful that she figures it out, because she has to.
Let's talk about Lauren Donaldson. We've talked about defense quite a fair bit, and it is clear that there is a game plan, there is an objective, there is a style, there is an approach to how Donaldson wants this team to play that they have not played in the past. How would you characterize his tenure throughout these first 3 games? And take it through any angle you want, whether it's tactical, whether it's player management, the way he handles the media, however you see him putting his stamp on this squad these first 8 games.
He's a pretty laid back dude when it comes to pressers and the like. When you see him out on the field at warm-ups, like he's very involved with the players. The players seem to like him a lot, and I think that's something that just helps. I think he understands that the plan might not go to plan, game in and game out, but I think he's assembled the best group that he could to try, and they've committed to at least weekly trying and being a team that wants to play hard and that wants to defend. And where they go wrong, I think, is seen in these last few games. The Angel City game set off just a weird, uncomfortable sequence of events where they just couldn't put 90 minutes together to save their life. They had a really terrible first half, and to their credit, they came back. And I think as far as that game was, at least, they would have, like, give them like 20 more minutes, they have a goal. But I think it might just be that it's a very young team and they don't have a lot of experience at this level playing together. And when they can finally start cooking together and on that same page, we see what we saw on Saturday, where they can find each other with their passes. They're not stuck in their own end, and they're not stuck trying to dribble around the other team's midfield. Yeah, I think they just kind of lost themselves a little bit against Portland, as one does when Sophia Smith is scoring quickly and unstoppable. Like, just players were stepping to her. 2-3 players were stepping to Sophia Smith, and she still tucks one in the back corner. Yeah, I think when they can dictate the pace, when Chicago can be pressing and winning the ball back and playing in that like fast transitional style that they like to play, where they can just be like, hey, Mel, take this, run. That's when we see them at their best. And they haven't really played that way for most of the last 3 games.
The NWSL is known as a transitional league. Teams like to play on the counter. They like to press. They like to be direct. There might not be a more direct transitional team than the Red Stars right now. Opta Analyst does these great graphics over at theanalyst.com where they map out how many passes they connect per possession sequence they have relative to how many meters per second they're getting up the field, basically trying to figure out how possession-y are you versus how direct are you. And so, like, if you're in the top left quadrant, you're a really fast and direct team. You don't like to have a lot of possession. And if you're in the lower right, you are connecting a lot of passes and you're not necessarily moving the ball super fast. And no surprise, the North Carolina Courage are as far as you can get in the lower right corner. But then the team that you cannot get any further left on the graph then is Chicago. They don't pass, and they just try and get things going upfield as quickly as you can. Totally makes sense given the talent that they have, the approach that Donaldson has. I think the thing that I have been given pause over, at least when it comes to attack, is we get it to Mal or we don't really have another option. As good as Allie Schlegel has been on the goals that she's scored, as good as Penelope Hocking has been in spells, that does seem to be plan A. And you have Sam Staub, best long-range passer from center back in the league. The Red Stars have attempted the 5th most long balls of any other team per game, about 65 long balls per game. They're only completing about 46% of them. That's almost at the bottom of the scale when you're talking about completion percentage for long balls. Dribbling, everybody knows how good Mal Swanson is when she gets her foot on the ball. Their dribbling completion percentage is less than 40%. That's 12th out of 14 teams. You worry that the things that they are trying to do aren't coming off, aren't connecting, aren't being produced by people other than Swanson, and therefore the attack could potentially become a little bit one-dimensional. And again, the non-penalty XG per 90, 10th in the league, a little bit better on a per-chance basis, about 6th in the league, but that's still basically mid. Do you see areas where maybe I'm wrong and it's not just the Mal Swanson show, or are you seeing areas where this team probably does need to clean some things up if this is how they want to play?
I mean, you're definitely right that getting the ball to Mal Swanson is like the single greatest thing this team can do to have a chance at goal. We've seen what kind of trouble that they can get into if a team can find a way to completely neutralize Mal Swanson, like they did against Washington. I think what worked better this past weekend, where Mal Swanson didn't have any goal contributions this weekend.
She did miss a penalty.
She did miss a penalty. I think she would pay good money to try that one again. But I do think trying to figure out just that best combination in that attacky midfield space. Again, analysis, not my vocation, so bear with me as I use some new terms here.
No worries.
That space to connect from the back line to the final third. What has worked well is Jamise Joseph. I think she is someone who only got her first start, I think, last weekend, but she's someone who just has a really good nose for the ball and has some sort of weird third eye for where is the person that I need to pass this ball to. So I'm interested to see how she continues to grow as a rookie. I think she is going to be someone who can make contributions in this space. I mean, she created the chance for Allie Schlegel, and Leilani Nesbeth is also someone who I think is in a similar spot as Jamise Joseph, where it's like she is young, scrappy, and hungry, the classic Chicago trifecta of person they need to make opportunities. So as those two grow into their rookie year, I think we're going to see exciting things from them.
Evan, to circle back to a point that I was thinking about because I am with you about what happens with long balls as well. I just think that everything that Chicago does, whether it's low dribbling percentage or low long ball completion percentage, doesn't take them out of their shape, and their shape is everything. Mm-hmm. And so when you play a long ball and it doesn't come off, you're not defensively caught out. I thought this weekend, a name we've not mentioned yet is Maximiliano Raul, who I think has been unbelievably good, or like very consistently good. As billed, she was occasionally toward the end of the game as Bay was chasing a goal, you'd find her caught upfield, but she was the only one who was a little bit caught upfield, over ambitious there. And I remember thinking, that's so strange that she is just sort of not where she should be, because the rest of this team is absolutely where they should be. And if you're not going to complete long balls, at least don't lose your defensive shape. If you're not going to complete dribbles, let it be a thing that you've done on your own, and then you can fall back into shape. They have a game plan. And whether it's a good game plan to win the league, I don't know. It's a good game plan to be better than they were last year, and it's definitely working in that sense. I think we think about how disjointed Chicago looked just shape-wise last year, and this is a completely different team in that sense. If I were going to credit Donaldson with anything, it is just this team will take these not high percentage anti-possession approaches to trying to create goals, and they're doing it at fair exchange for never being defensively caught out. In some games, like against Seattle, that was great. Against Bay, they really weren't caught out. They concede a freak goal. And in some games against teams, like Washington or Portland, who have really high-end attacking talent, they're either very unlucky, as they were with Washington. Washington generated less than a full XG and scored 4 goals. That's not going to happen to you every week. Or you're just going to occasionally get beat. But if the goal is to like make incremental progress, I feel like philosophically they've got their defense, generally speaking, where they kind of want it to be. And if they can find players to add, I think they're actually okay. And I'm going to eat a lot for that 13th.
The position that helps you keep shape is your engine room, central midfield. And as you also mentioned, this team is relatively new, but an area where they're not actually that new is central midfield.
It's true.
Last year, Kerry Riccaro and Julia Bianchi were arguably the two worst central midfielders in the whole league. Whether that was entirely their fault or whether that was just a product of system and style and coaching and team performance, whatever, regardless, they were quite bad. This year, less bad. So, Lesley, as someone who's watching this team up close, what are you seeing out of Riccaro and Bianchi and the way that Donaldson is trying to change their games and the way that they work to, as Eric pointed out, try and preserve defensive shape so they're not getting caught on an island upfield and being dribbled past constantly?
Yeah, I mean, I think what works for Kerry Riccaro is that she's a veteran of this league. She's been playing this game in this league for a very long time. And she has that maturity, but she also has that kind of spark plug, might take a yellow card if I have to mentality to her. Julia Bianchi is interesting to me. I think she gives really good service. I think sometimes she might get a little in her head about dribbling the ball around, but I'm interested to see how she continues to grow, because last season wasn't her best season, but she still made it up to to Brazil. She got from being not called up to called up for the Brazilian national team. I do think it's a bit too soon for me to say if they're the right players to see this through. I do think that Kerry Riccaro has done a really good job of keeping the ball out of trouble, and last season she was not very good at that. She gave away the ball a lot from my recollection. I don't know if they're in the right spot right now, but I don't necessarily know who would take that spot given the current personnel that the team have.
Has this team evolved in any way, just even within this season? After the road win against Utah on opening day, to the road win against Bay FC over the weekend, what changes or evolutions, if any, have you been able to notice in the way that they play and the way that they're approaching games?
I mean, I would be remiss not to mention my wife saying this weekend that they need to be so much more composed when they're deciding when that long ball needs to go and just making that decision. So she's absolutely on your team, Eric, there. The big thing for them has been having it from the jump. This last game, we've seen a bit of, maturity is kind of where I want to put it, but Ali Schlegel was talking about this in the post game, that they gained calluses from these past few games. Each of these last 3 games, they went down early. They had a mistake in those last 2 games against Portland, against Washington. It took a VAR call being wrong for the team to really get up and go. But for this team, I think they just were finally able to respond, to turn on that gear switch that's like, hey, no, wake up. We've got shit to do. I think this weekend was a moment for them to be like, do we want to be this one-hit wonder team that got off to a nice start and then falls off, or do we want to fucking play? And so they got into their pressing again. They're making better choices, not all the time, but maybe a higher ratio than the past few games. And there's still so much to work on, but I think that it sounds stupid to just be like, they're gritting their way through, but I think they are. I think the X grit is off the chart with this team.
Very high.
X-Dog 96 is exploding.
Maybe this is a good place to sort of transition to what to you is a successful season for them? What is the best reasonable outcome for this team in your mind?
I think at the beginning of the season, I would have said they would make a chase for the playoffs, but I think now I'm inclined to say I think this team is going to make the playoffs. I think I would be surprised if they do not.
I think that would constitute, given where they were last season, a success in any of our minds.
Massively so.
To go from a team that was like historically bad in relation to the rest of its league to a playoff team, that'd be remarkable.
They lost their entire midfield to free agency last season, and they pretty much lost their entire back line in this iteration of free agency. So to be able to rebuild their defense, and they probably still need a couple of midfield pieces to really make that run for the top, run for the championship, but I think they're closer than we would have thought them to be at the end of last season or at the beginning of this season.
It would be a crime to deny the women's soccer world from another Lorne Donaldson somersault if they got into the knockout rounds. After getting Jamaica into the round 16, and he did the most old man at a barbecue kind of like half toss, ass over elbow, the world just needs more of that content.
Yeah. I'd be excited to see what the second iteration of that is.
Oh, I can't even imagine, because he's now playing with one of his proteges, Mel Swanson.
The last thought I had about the Chicago team, and I think it's actually sort of been the key to their success, they have not had more than 46% possession in a single game.
Yeah.
They did that against the Thorns. Wild. The thing that gives me hope for them is that they really haven't been outplayed. They are keeping games within about an XG if they are losing them.
Yeah.
And when they are winning the games, they are a team that will be in each game and able to dig out something. I think they're like kind of very productive midfield signing away from suddenly being kind of like a team you don't really want to play in a knockout. If you asked me, what team do you think requires the most fixes to elevate themselves to the next level? In the offseason, I think we would have definitely said Chicago.
We did say Chicago.
We didn't definitely say Chicago. We said Utah's barely a professional team, and we said Chicago, a professional team, has a lot that needs to be done. And now I look at this team and I go, you're maybe like a piece or two away from being a huge pain in the ass to play.
Lesley, have you gotten any sense from whether it's Laura Ricketts or anybody else in the front office that they are interested in spending over the summer to add a piece for after the Olympics?
You know, I haven't really had a chance to talk to them again since after the preseason, but the vibe I get from Karen Lietzau,
Who's president of business operations.
first president, not named Arnhem Whistler in a long time. So I think she's got this presence to her that is like, we're gonna fucking fix everything here. Like the Red Stars had a record-breaking home attendance on the first match, and she didn't seem pleased with it. She was like, no, we can do better, and we will do better. So, and like Richard Foyt's, he is someone who intrigues me, not just because he dresses like a debonair Bond villain, but...
Well, he's Swiss. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? He has experience in building squads, and I would imagine he's seeing the same things that we're all seeing. And so I'm interested to see when that window opens, what they do, because it does seem pretty clear that there is a need, and their contemporaries around the league are opening the wallet. So I don't think the wallet is necessarily going to be a problem as it has in years past. So I think if they want it, they're going to get it. That's the vibe I get.
You know whose wallet needs to be opened? Expected own goals. Please contribute frequently and often. You can follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter XOwnGoals. Please rate us, review us, follow us wherever you get podcasts. Tell all of your friends about us. Rate us 5 stars if you're going to rate us at all. If you think we have an own goal, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. I have an own goal that I just realized 90 seconds ago. I've been saying the Red Stars GM's last name in the French pronunciation, and it sounds like it's the German pronunciation. It's not it's Foyts.
Foyts is what we got on Media Day, yes.
I will own that.
You really put your foits in your mouth on that one.
I think we all know that's a regular occurrence. You could follow Gal Pal Sports at Gal Pal Sports on all social channels. Please follow and listen to their podcast, Football is Wife. It is an absolute delight.
Yeah, it's the best.
The only reason it's a delight is because of Emily Anderson and her dear wife who joined us today, Lesley Ryder. Thank you so much. This was a blast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is great fun.